And Susan has left the room. We are live. I've got with the Vortex Energy podcast. We tried this 2 days ago. It failed miserably just to a terrible internet connection. And now we had Sue on here as well, and she just dropped out. Hopefully, she's going to be able to link back in very shortly. Where'd she go? But we do have Michelle Newman, who we've been trying really hard to talk to because she's got some. Welcome, Michelle.
Welcome, Barbara. And Sue, wherever she may be.
I'm just debating if, anyway, we'll see how this goes. Anyway, we wanted to talk with Michelle today because she came by to visit a few weeks ago, and she's doing some really awesome things here in Tasmania, in Hobart, working with people, and she's created an entire Soul Journey Academy, all about spiritual awakening. We're like, my God, this is exactly what we do too. This is so awesome to meet kindred souls, helping the planet and helping everyone on the planet to raise their vibration. So give me 1 second. Let me just see where Sue is. You can tell this is live.
See where Sue is, that's fine.
Give me 1 sec.
Yep. Have a cup of tea. Be back.
Hang on. Hey, Sue? What does it say? Just can you click on that messenger link again and log in? Okay, we're hoping to get Sue back on live soon. But in the meantime, Michelle, tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey.
Oh, okay. Well, my spiritual journey began really early. I'm a descendant from both sides of the family in terms of whether you want to call it witching or whether you want to call it spiritual awakening. So I was the strange kid who always had friends with me all the time.
You're the friends no one could see.
Everyone else couldn't see them, but I could. They were my best mates, and I could see sparkles and journeys and all this sort of stuff. And of course, to survive at school, I had to let all that go. And then in my late 30s, and my nonna, who was my dad's mum, had passed away many years ago, and then an auntie came to me and gave me a crystal in a necklace and said, Nana always said to give this to you. Wow, bam, there was no, it just connected me straight into the spiritual world, almost out of control. Because, once you connect to that super highway, and particularly if you haven't had any schooling or teaching about some of the essentials, which we'll talk about later, those what I call the 5 foundations, you just get flooded because the word goes out. So then wherever I went, I had my friends back, but in really large numbers, and no filter. So I had everything calling in. And then through another strange coincidence where someone gave me a crystal, someone else I didn't know said, I've got to give you this, and they gave me another crystal. And it was an earthing crystal. And it was yeah, that's right. It was an agate, and that was like, boom. And then I started to get control back. Perfect, in terms of not being so completely open. And then that started me on a whole range of maybe coincidences, but I started working with the mother from India. She came and we did some tutoring. Lucky she tutored me. She gave me a beautiful name called Amashindi, which is Mother Temple, which I completely ran away from because it's a big name. So I went, that's not mine, that's not mine. Ran away from. And then I went and traveled to Bali for my business and met a lot of shamans and studied with them. And they were really into healing in Bali. It's all about the ones I studied with were in healing. And then I ended up living in a country called Laos. And in Laos, I got really deeply into meditation. I had started doing meditation in Singapore with these big crystals, and I mean big crystals. And and then in meditation, in Laos, I became a meditation master. And that meditation master took me on hours of meditating, takes you on a lot of trips. And in Laos, Buddhism is mixed with animistic. So they use the shamanism and the Buddhism and they bring it together in the temples. So it's a great place for me to learn spirituality. So that's been my trip. And then COVID, I'm in Hobart. So there you are at the Patriot Cup. And Helen and Lynn just opened up her arms, and I needed her to open her arms because I was a bit in shell shock. But it's been great. So that's been my journey.
So what kind of work were you doing when you were traveling in Singapore and Laos? What was your
the work I was
primary?
doing in Singapore, Laos, is I started off channeling spirits and house cleaning, because Singapore's got a really
a lot of people need that both. Clear the spirits out of the houses. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing, because Singapore has got a huge history of violence from World War II. So lots of people, particularly the expats, they're all living in these old World War II houses. And it's full of people who haven't moved on. So a lot of what I was doing was cleaning, and I cleaned both energies and what I call entities. Language is really difficult in the spiritual world because we're all coming to it from different pathways, right? And there's not one book that says this is the word. We're studying a whole range of different being handed down by teachers and parents and families and spirits. So spirits for me are people or things that have worked on the earth, but entities are perhaps not so much. So I was doing a lot of cleansing, and a lot of channeling for people. And it was in Singapore when I got into doing tarot, and I got into this group, and really nice group of all different disciplines. And that's when we started to do a lot of really deep meditation with the chakras. So that's what I was doing in Singapore. Now I left that when I went to Laos, and I started going right deep into both animism and Buddhism, and looking at not just looking at meditation, but what meditation gave me was a real ability when I'm working with spirits to get really focused really quickly. So it really gave me great control over my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a result of that, it really allowed me to open my mind up. So I then started doing a lot of distance work. Again, it was distance work around cleansing. And then I started to get more into healing, because animism is a lot about healing. And then the other thing I was doing a little bit in Laos, which was surprising to me, was that I was starting when people were using their skills to harm others, because one of the things that I travel with all the time is first do no harm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, like regardless of whether it's an entity, a being, a place, person, whatever, first do no harm. And when you get to a certain point in your spiritualism, it's a bit of a head rush to feel that power and to feel your capacity to play with energies. So I was doing a little bit of work with people who had perhaps got a little bit too much into the defining their ego through their capacity to
that is what happens a lot, isn't it? That ego jumps back in. Yeah.
That ego jumps back in. And what starts off with the best of intentions can easily end up being what would be the word for it? Self-exploitation of that skill or that being. So I actually spend a lot of time working with my higher self and my guides, and I question a lot what I do and how I'm doing it, just to make sure I'm on the right path, so
Yeah.
to speak, that my ego's not running amok. And even sometimes when I get messages to do things, I have the big, I'm not the, oh, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. I'm the, oh, wait a minute, you're asking me to do what? Kind of discussion with my guides.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is being clear
Because
who's coming through, because yeah, people always
yeah,
think, oh, I have a guide or I'm channeling someone, that it's always somebody good. Well, not necessarily.
no.
You know.
Look, that's so one of the things that I say. I look at people, Barbara, and I go, hey, don't be sure that the spirit superhighway that everyone's got your back, because that's not the
Yeah.
way it is. Some
Yeah.
people are just playful. Some people
Yeah.
are not playful. They're downright, a bit manipulative and nasty. And if you, as I do, if you're working for people or entities that are not from this plane, their rules
Yeah.
are different. Right? Their rules of engagement are different. So it's not necessarily that they're being particularly nasty, but they have a different way of doing things. So you've got to be really clear, and about who am I interacting with, and what's the intention behind this, and that gives you a greater sense of trust. And you've really got to go with your gut sometimes and go, no, this needs to slow right down. I don't know if this has got the wrong feel, or this has got the wrong, energy about it, or I feel uncomfortable about it. Because if they're there and they're your guides and they're wanting you to do something, but you feel uncomfortable, they will give you the support.
Yeah.
If they're not your guides, they're just going to try and coerce you or push you into doing it. And there's a difference between the level of support. But anyway, that's something that I actually try and help people try and discern,
Well, I was going to say that's a huge thing for people to be able to discern, and I find that conversation isn't had often enough. That they need to be able to discern what those nuances are.
Yeah, I totally get that. But I think that's because we get a bit excited about working with spirit, right? It's a
Yeah.
buzz. Let's be honest, it's a buzz, right? It's a total buzz. And
Yeah.
and so we go, oh, this has all got to be good. And you go, no, because we know it's not good. Because I'll just give you an example. There's a lady I've been working with, and she keeps saying
Without
to me, like,
sharing
it's
any
totally
names.
cool.
Yeah.
No,
I
we're
said
not
without
mentioning
sharing
any
any
names,
names.
all places, all countries. So by the way, I work all around the world. So this is not even
Yeah.
here. So, and she keeps telling me that the family's completely comfortable with the spirit. I go, well, that's good. But she said, I'm worried because the dogs don't like it. And I go, oh, honey, trust your dogs. Because if
Yeah.
they're not comfortable with what's going down in your house, you're
Yeah.
kidding yourself if you're comfortable with what's going down in your house. But this is
Yeah.
this intuition that we talked about, this trusting that it's okay to say no. You don't have to
And
say yes to every spirit.
yeah, and what you're showing as well is people can easily delude themselves into thinking, oh, this is all good because they came down, they're not from here, and I'm getting all these, this whatever is happening, and they're flattered, like, oh, spirits in my house, a ghost lives in my place. And it's not always good.
Yeah,
And
they
it's not
chose me.
always
They chose
something to,
me. And you go,
yeah, yeah, Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and
so that's,
I think that's really right. I mean, and we should be flattered. I mean, it's great that they choose to speak with us, but it's the same as talking with people. You've got to be a little bit sharp about sometimes when you're talking to people about who's genuine and who's not genuine. And we know that in our own relationships with people. We might interact with someone in a coffee shop and it's really pleasant, but we walk away. You know,
yeah.
they're not a lifelong friend. They're not a big connection. And sometimes the spirit world is like that. Someone pops in. Thank you so much for popping in, but see you later. This is not working for me. You know, and
Yeah.
that's perfectly
And
okay. Yeah, that's perfectly okay.
I want to give a shout out to some of our guests who are commenting here from Taz. We've got Janet Drummond and Holly Watson and Karen Polden. So thanks for joining in. And please leave your comments or any questions you have for Michelle, because we're going to dive deep into what are some of the things that you can actually do to help develop your spiritual connection to the entities and the guides that you would like to hear from.
Yeah, and I think so because I put together a bit of what we talked about earlier, a bit of a spiritual awakening guide, and I've put 5 foundation skills in, and these are intent and intention, which we could talk about all day. Earthing, which I think most of us got we aware of, binding, contracts, and cleansing, and these are my 5 foundations. I think if you can get them under your belt as a skill, it's going to set you up for life. But one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is in all of this is this element of staying earth, and I love this whole idea about staying earth, but I do find in a lot of practices it's not particularly sexy. The fly yeah, the flying around, you know, on your astro trips and having everybody pop in, or even when you're meditating, you know, opening up the higher chakras and having a great out of body experience. Now that's sexy, right? But that
Yeah, no, you're right. You're
foundation work,
right.
yeah, right, that's
Yeah,
really sexy and it's a big
it
buzz.
is.
But that
Yeah,
foundation work of those lower chakras and keeping yourself conscious that you're having a physical experience. We're here for a reason. You know, we are spiritual beings, or we're capable of being spiritual beings, but we're here on earth in a physical body, and this is where we're choosing to be.
yeah,
So we gotta honor that. We gotta honor that, and we have to protect that as well. Because you know, you do see people who have lost that connection, and they're just, you know, off with the fairies, as the saying goes, all day, every day. That's not honoring who you are, right?
it's really
That's not
funny that
honoring who
this
we are.
conversation's come up, because it's a conversation I have relatively often with people, because that disconnect between the amazing things that can happen and the skies open up and you travel to some astral plane in meditation, and the reality of saying we're here in this physical body, and how do we merge and explore that consciousness that we are here right now. And that is, to
Yeah.
me, I think, really the big question. It's not can you meditate and go someplace. It's can you bring and be that place here, and how do we develop that connection?
Oh,
So
I'm
I'm really
totally
thrilled
with
that,
you. I'm
yeah,
totally with you because my whole thing is if you cannot bring that into your life here and live a spiritual life in the physical plane, then you haven't mastered spirituality.
yeah,
You're still playing
yeah,
with it, but you haven't mastered it. Because mastering it is to take, it's not just to get excited about what you're doing, but to understand on each one of these little trips, someone's trying to impart some information or some understanding to you. And they want you to take that experience and bring it back and bring it into your
yeah,
life and integrate it into who you are and to live it on a daily life. So to me, spirituality is not something that happens at 8 p.m. when you're meditating, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's not what it is. It's something that we're trying to live. We're trying to live
yeah.
connected, but still earthed. And
Exactly,
that's what we're trying
exactly.
to reach. Yeah.
So, and
And
that's
I
what
did.
I'd like to come back to. If you could just very clearly for everyone, just run through those 5 levels that you talk about as your basic foundations again, so that they can understand and maybe give us some little tips on how they would apply that. Because the word sounds so simple and goes, yeah, 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 I know that. But it really is about how to apply these 5 foundational skills into their life. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you take
And
this.
I will. Okay. And the other thing about applying them is applying them not just consciously, but applying them to the point where they become subconscious. So they garner everything you do. So I put the first one out as the intent, which we all talk about a lot. But to me, intent is when we have a complete harmony of thought, word, emotion, and action. And
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, it's a blending of heart and mind where we're giving a true statement of what we are trying to do and achieve. And not just achieve in terms of flying, but achieve in our life with every action that we're doing. So why are
So I
we
want to
going on
just
this meditation?
highlight that. Can I just highlight that for a second? Because you're one of the few people I've heard mention action with that intent. People often consider action as something theoretical, or it's, emotional, it's the words. But to add action to that intent is, to me, the force behind all of the secrets that everyone talks about, the secret to
Absolutely.
spirituality.
Oh, yeah. Because what is the point if we don't actualize it? What's the point if we
Yeah,
don't enact it?
right.
Yeah. It stays a theory. We're not bringing
Yeah,
it
it's a
into our
theory and a
life.
concept. Yeah,
Bringing it into our
yeah,
life is the enacting of it. That's what I see it
yeah.
as. Yeah. So, because I'm all about the inaction, I'm all about let's do it. Let's not talk about it. We could talk about it. I could talk about it till the cows come home, but I like to do it as well. So,
So what's your best tip for yourself to bring that action to that intent that you've created?
okay. So what I do with people is or what I do with myself is I think about how do I want that to be on a day-to-day basis? How do I want that to be in my life?
Yeah.
So one of the things is, get this example. I talk to people. It's a very clear example, but we talk about manifesting. And someone says, I want to manifest. I want a happier life. And we've got to go, what is a happier life?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you just say, I want a happy life, and you put no definition around that, you're leaving that up to somebody else
Yeah.
to give you a happy life. And it's like coming ready or not, right? And it's up to their definition. And it's like they don't live your life. Your guides and spirits, who knows where they've come from? And let's just say you've got a guide from ancient Egypt. A happy life in ancient Egypt is not the same as a happy life in downtown Hobart,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so if you're asking them to help you have a happy life, you've got to help them help you. And the way to do that is to get greater clarity about what you want. And it's the same with saying, oh, I really want to learn. What do you want to learn? And it's the spending the time to think about it before you jump in and do it. So again, it's this fine balance between what are you trusting? Because to me, if we're not putting that definition in, we're not trusting ourselves. And if we can't trust
Yeah.
ourselves, why are we just handing it all over to someone else to take care of our lives? Right? We're here.
Yeah.
This is our life. And in many ways, we
Yeah.
choose this life. So make the most of it. Really get to grips with it. So that's what and to be honest, I'll be really honest with you, that was one of the key learnings that Buddhism gave me.
Hmm.
The study of Buddhism, because it's really about being really clear about what your intent is. And they describe intent in terms of you living your life here now. So it was really interesting. But I think that's Yeah. So to me, that's what intention is. It's about you bringing everything back to you living a spiritual life here on this earth in this life, and incorporating that into who you are. That's what it is. Okay.
I
So
love
that's
that.
how
I
I.
think that you've explained that very beautifully. So thank you for that. And
Okay.
the next one, well, it is. Not everybody explains it clearly and coherently, so that was good. The next one you talked about was earthing, and that's something that's I think a lot of people again have an idea that they know what that is, but they don't. In my mind, they don't actually apply it on a daily basis. So why don't you tell us
Yeah.
how
Look,
you view earthing and
okay. Yeah. Well, to me, that's this whole concept of binding your spiritual self to your physical self. That's, to me,
mm,
that's the earthing. With the sense that your physical self is of the earth and walking on the earth. And what it is it is this capacity of keeping us, I see it as keeping us safe, but I also see it as keeping us rooted in our lives, um, anchored in our lives, and giving that respect to um, the fact that what we do impacts not just us on a physical level, but impacts physically on the world around us. So it is that whole process of making sure that we honor and respect that physical element, and if you like, the humanity of our experience. And humanity, we can deny it all we like, but we are totally dependent and of this earth. And this is where we're
yeah.
trying to get that mix, isn't it, between the spirituality and then bringing it down. But what I love about animism and the study of animism, and this is also to do, I think, with Wicca, is that they absolutely recognize that you must honor the earth.
Mm.
You must honor the plants, the trees, the earth itself, the stones, the crystals. So it's that kind of process of honoring um, where we are living and the fact that we couldn't live without it. And then really being clear that this is who we are and this is who we are meant to be. And that we value our 9 to 5 as much as we value our 8 p.m. meditation when we're off, astro surfing. So we've got to value our day-to-day life. And this is, I think, the dilemma for us when we start, because we go off and have these sexy mind experiences, and our day-to-day life may not be that sexy. It's dishes, you know,
Yeah.
it's right. But if we are following the Buddhist experience and we follow their concept of mindfulness, you really get into washing the dishes so that it actually becomes a mind-body experience when you wash the dishes. So it's
I'm
about
with you
always being
100%. I
aware.
think that is about bringing that consciousness into not just every day, but all day, 24/7. It's not about there's a
Yeah,
separation from, oh, now I'm being spiritual. I'm going to go do my yoga or my qigong or my meditation, and then the rest of the time, no, I'm not. I'm back to human. We are that consciousness already, and it's allowing
yeah,
that to be
yeah.
witnessed. You know.
One of the things that's really interesting when I used to teach people, they used to come and stay with me for long periods of time and teach the meditation, and I used to say, what's one of the things you hate doing? And 9 times out of 10 it was the dishes. And I would say, okay, you are on the path when you start finding a way to enjoy doing the dishes.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite true,
Yeah.
right?
And to love the dishes.
You get to love the dishes because you get to do and you go, what am I doing? Because you're going, well, I'm grateful I had a really lovely meal. I can see the rainbows and the bubbles. You start, oh, isn't that soft? So you start getting into the textures, and that's where mindfulness. This is the difficulty. Mindfulness is about, I enjoy doing the dishes because I'm really focusing on getting the dishes done, and that's my priority for this period of time. And when you start doing things like that, it challenges you on a whole other level, because it completely challenges our everyday perception of what being spiritual is. Yeah.
I agree with
And
you because I
I'm into,
think, yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting about challenging yourself on that level. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Because I
that's
work with a
fascinating.
young,
So go ahead.
I work
Sorry.
with a young woman, and her thing is that she loves to clean a space and get it sparkling. And I mean, she loves it. But in that moment, she's so into what she's doing that's actually almost beautiful. And you
Mm.
go, see, this is what it's about. Some people would think that's the most boring thing on the planet to do. She's taken it and turned it into an art form because she's so into what she's doing at that moment. And that's beautiful with anybody. When you see anybody who's so into what they're doing, it's a beautiful thing to observe and see, isn't it? It's like, wow.
No, it really is. And I wanted to just jump on. Janet's made a comment here, a reflection on the conversation. She says she thinks the connection of spirit to daily life journey is never mastered as such, which is just my viewpoint. I think it's a continuum and I traverse it throughout life, sometimes more connected to spirit, sometimes less connected. But to tune into spirit is what I can do on a daily basis and listen to the soft voices guiding me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm totally with you about that learning thing because that's what I love about this. There's no end. It's
Yeah.
a, if you choose, you can take this as far as you want if you choose. If you choose to stop, that's okay. But if you choose to continue, fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Who knows where it's going
Well,
to take
also
us?
there's a brand new challenge or something coming up. There's a brand new situation. You know,
Yeah,
all you have to do is look at how dramatic the challenge was of COVID. And here in
yeah,
Tasmania, we've been more than relatively spared. We've been completely spared compared to the challenges other people on the planet have faced. And it's,
yeah,
talk about something that came out of the blue. We go, oh, here, deal with this now. Go
yeah.
figure this
That's
out.
right. And that's the challenge, isn't it? When something unexpected happens, how we
Yeah.
deal with that. And that's and getting back to what Janet was it Janet was saying.
Yeah.
I'm with her on that. It's when this unexpected stuff happens and how I react to it. That's when I know how I'm doing, whether I've actually integrated the spirituality in it, or on that day I'm just pissed, and I and it's all been washed away, and I'm having to go, God damn, get back in. But there are always these moments, and it's
Yeah.
easy when life is easy. It's the test is when something pops up and you got to deal with it and it's unexpected, right? That's the test.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell
Yeah.
Janet I'm 100% with you. I'm right with you. I think that's great. Absolutely, absolutely. And just so you know, whenever I think I've finished the lesson, I always get what I call the wet fish in the face, you know, and I go, oh, got to start again. Haven't
That's
mastered
very
it.
funny. That because that is exactly what it is. Just check again. The test you to make sure. Did you really learn that? Is that really something you've accomplished? Yeah.
Yeah,
But tell us again. So your third aspect, your third tip is what you call binding. So tell us a
yeah.
little bit
And I
about
think,
that.
okay, so my fundamental belief is that uh, there are, if you like, different planes, and not only the different planes, there's different forms of us. We've got our energetic self, we've got a spiritual self, we've got our physical self, and we're capable of splitting those up and having our little journeys. So the body might remain in the room, but the energetic self is off doing something, and the spiritual self is off doing something. And binding is that process of making sure when we're finished, we bring everything back in and it's back in and connected. Okay. Because we've all had that experience. Well, I'm assuming most of us have had that experience where we know we haven't been in our bodies. We've been doing our day-to-day stuff, but something's and that's a normal process in terms of the learning process, right? For some reason, you've been invited to, and they've taken you on a journey, and you're doing your learning. But again, talking about what we are, physical beings, we've got to make sure we bring that all back and bring it back in, and that we spend most of our time, spiritual, energetic, and physical self, not just connected, but integrated,
Yeah.
so that we can take that learning and put it through all the different combinations so it makes sense to us. So that's what we've got to be. That's what we've got to be doing. So that's the binding. The binding is just making sure after we've had our little trips or healings or whatever it is, that we bring everything back in and we bring it into this connectedness, not just connectedness, but integrated, so that the learning can take place, so that we are one, because we are designed to be one. But we just have the capacity at times to be more than one. But we are designed to be one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's a great comment from Karen who says she loves the washing the dishes and its concept. This is so true. I'm going to try to be mindful when delivering the mail in the rain tomorrow. I shall embrace the moment. that is the challenge.
Yeah, that is a big challenge. And if you do that, I want to know about it.
Yeah, you're going to have to post back here tomorrow morning, Karen, and let us know how that goes. Because that is the shift. You know, I talk about this every morning because I still do the cold showers. I've been doing it for over 3 years now. And it's not about suffering or being painful or being an aesthetic. It's saying, I make my brain make the shift from saying, oh my God, this is so frigging freezing, to saying, oh, it's okay. It's just cold water. And then I get out and I'm so warm when I get out. And so that's my test that I do to myself every day. I consider it a sport, but it's waiting for that switch to flip and to say, maybe something is painful that you're doing. You go, okay, it's not so bad. It's not bad at all, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I say, when you do that, that's the elevated self, because that's when you start to understand how powerful the intention is, how powerful when you put thought and emotion and words into action, that's how powerful it is. All of a sudden it goes from, oh my God, you do what, to, oh yeah, rocking it. And that's when you really start to get the most out of your life, you know, when you can do things like that, because then it just sets you up. And then it becomes, well, what's a challenge? I could do that. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
I will do that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you've taken the ice bucket challenge on with vengeance.
It's not ice bucket, it's just cold water, but you know, it is.
Yeah.
And it's
I
I consider it a
know.
sport. I consider, you know, because
Look,
no
I
one's
think
pretending that it's
right.
pleasant to get in there. I don't pretend that.
No,
And it
well,
is
see,
very hard.
I think that is, look, I think that's also what you just said is so important. It's not about coding everything what I call unicorns and rainbows. You've got to be really honest about this. I mean, there's times when I go to meditate and it's hard yards to get into that state. And when you're learning these things, often it's hard yards. But that's what learning is. I mean, you think about it, what we're doing, and particularly as adults, we're taking one way that we've been thinking about ourselves and life and right and wrong, and we've decided we're going to change that. Of course it's going to be difficult. You know, it's not going to be easy, because we're going, no, that habit or that thing that I've been doing for the last 10 years, and maybe that thing you were doing for the last 10 years was great and valid and got you through some tough shit. And all of a sudden you're going, no, I'm not going to do it. Served its purpose. I want to change that now. That's not easy. That's really hard. And to do it every day for 3 years and know that you've got to be thinking about doing it, it's hard. So just so you know, I always have to think before I wash the dishes. Because that's my heart. Because I do not like the dishes.
To make that shift, it's got to be the same thing. Like you got to wait for that mental shift to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just doing the dishes, right?
Otherwise you're just doing the dishes. Otherwise you're just doing the cold shower. And they go, why do you do the cold shower? And you go, because it's good for you. And you go, no. You got to do it for more than just because it's good for you. You know. So anyway.
Yeah.
So and that's the whole gambit, isn't it? And I suppose all of that's trying to understand our motivations. And again, getting back to, and maybe that's also to do with the intent. I understand the getting high from, the buzz of astro travel and leaving your body and all of that. But after a while, you've got to ask yourself, why are we doing this? What are we getting out of this? So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So after binding, I have a thing called contracts. And the reason I brought this up is because probably based on my work in Singapore when I was ghost busting. But, and this also gets back to this spiritual superhighway, not everyone's got your back. Don't make contracts with entities or spirits. They should not be asking you to do that. If I do this, will you do that? That's not what it's about. Or if you do this, I'll do this for you. Again, that should be a real red flag that this is not a healthy relationship. But a lot of people get sucked in and start doing it, Oh, I put up with having a spirit in my house because it's really exciting and he tells me it's good to have a spirit. No, So I'm really into making sure that if you are working with spirits and entities, sorry, I just put my screen back on. If you are working with spirits and entities, that you're doing this because you are happy to do it and you've reached an understanding with each other, and that it's all a give and take, and it's freely given and it's freely taken, if you know what I mean. Because in some of my ghost bustings, I do work with some strong entities that come from different planes. If I'm working with something that is quite powerful and doesn't need to be there, what I do is I have to get it back to where it came from safely. So I do work sometimes with another being who I set free, and he does that for me. And he said to me, should we set up a contract? Because the previous human he worked with, he had a contract. And I said, no, I broke that contract so you could be free. I'm not putting another one out there.
Yeah.
So no. So I'm really into, have some agreements with them, have some boundaries with them, but I'm not into having a contract. It's more like have some guidelines which you review, have some agreements that you review, have some boundaries that you review, but be really wary of anyone or any entity that starts to set up a contract with you or behavioral contract with you. That's kind of not the way. Well, it's like what you're doing with the vortex. You're the guardians of it, but you're not, there's no contractual arrangement. It's you willingly giving up your time, energy, and spiritual ability to do it, right? And then in response to that, the energies around the vortex are giving back to you. And that's exactly what it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your last key for this spiritual awakening, the cleansing bit.
Okay. Well, this has got to do with the fact that when we open up, we're highly porous, let's just say. So we're completely open up to experiencing entities. And when we're experimenting, we're traveling, we're meeting, we're saying hello to people, we're working with our guides. When we open up, it's a bit, I describe it to people like we're going on a social media platform. Our profile's gone up, but we mightn't have done the privacy checks. So we're completely
I like that,
right?
definition, yeah.
So then, and the spirit world goes, hey, there's a new one, at number 42. Let's go.
There's a fresh one. It's a fresh one, yeah.
Let's go and check this one out. Yay! And like I said, they all come in. And okay, your guides come in and some nice people from your family come in, but let's face it, when we say everyone comes in, the guy that used to deliver the mail 100 years ago, he might pop in, and you never know who's going to pop in. And there might also be what I call these, entities or remains, which are a little bit, when you walk in a room and you get that feeling and you go, oh, or a particular space and you go, ugh. And that's the bit I'm talking about. So when we're first beginning, and each time we go on a new level of learning and exposure, we are always going back to the beginning. So we are open. And it's really important to make sure that we keep our spaces clean. We keep our person clean, because I do have removed a number of entities that have hooked a ride, some things that have just come in and decided to be with a certain person and won't leave. We can pick up something. I like found objects. I like secondhand objects, but you can easily pick up something with one of those that's just decided to attach itself. So one of the things you got to do is trust your instinct. If you're feeling uncomfortable about anything, if you're feeling like you're not quite yourself, or you feel a bit dirty, you got to give yourself a cleansing. Now, 1,001 ways to cleanse. Sage, salt. I still use salt. Australian natives are great for cleansing. And I wonder why that is. We've got so many Australian native essential oils that are great for cleansing. And
so tell me, how would you use how would you use an Australian essential oil for cleansing?
Well, I use eucalyptus and blue gum all the time. And I have them, I could put them in a few drops, and I have them infusing out. Sometimes what I do is I use them like an anointment, and I close over the third eye, the throat, the chest. I can do it like that. I might even just make them into a spray and spray them, around the room. Sometimes if I find I'm doing a lot of traveling at night, I spray the bed. So
that's interesting, because you're the first person I've heard say to use the Australian natives, but it makes perfect sense.
Well, eucalyptus is really good, and blue gum's really good for cleansing. Look, because they're also healers. Like, they've got antibiotic products, they've got antiviral. Right? I find they're great for, they're really good, and they're really good for healing. I'm surprised how often when I'm channeling they come up. So I would use them. So I just use them in the infusion. I use them in a spray, and sometimes I use them on me. I find third eye, wrists, and chest is almost like my protection, triangle in terms of getting that done. Look, and sometimes if I feel I might put it on like a scrubber and just give my body a little scrub in the shower with some salt, just to spruce it all up. So that's how I use them. But I think it's a really important it's a really important ritual to get in the habit of just making sure that everything is clean, and you're clean. Spiritually and energetically clean.
So let's just do a quick recap for everybody.
Yep.
Yep. So do a quick recap on the 5 tips to develop their spiritual awakening.
Okay. So these are your 5 foundation tips. First of all, get your intention sorted. Just really understand what you're doing it and why you're doing it, and have, if you like, a bit of an endpoint. I'm doing this to achieve this for my life here. Earthing is really important. We are having, and have chosen to have, an earthly experience. We're living here, and our earth is really our mother. She provides for us. So honor that earth and keep yourself earth, so you keep that humanity connection going, because that's who we are. Binding. Go off and have your trips. That's what life's about. But when we come back, integrate everything so that you are one, and that learning can happen, so that what you've learned in the spiritual realm can integrate with the energetic realm, can integrate with the physical realm. Do that. Contracts. Any entity or spiritual being that asks you to sign a contract, be really wary, because that's not how it works. It works on faith and trust and what's it called when you reciprocality, I'm going to say, but there's repository, I think. It works on give and take. Can't get the word out. And the last one is cleansing.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Thank you so much. Works on reciprocity. We give, we take, and it all balances out in the end. And the last one is the cleansing, and that's about keeping ourselves safe and making sure that our body and our space, our energetic and our spiritual space, and our physical spaces and our physical body is sacred and it's cleansed. And that just keeps you safe and keeps you on top of your game. That's it. That's your 5.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on, Michelle. So how can people reach you who want more info?
Oh, you can find me. I've got my business is Soul Journey Academy. There's a Facebook. There's a website. You can do that. I'm at the Page and Cup in Hobart, so you can ring the Page and Cup and get in contact with me. And I'll give you, if you're interested, the number is 04747 31958. 04747 31958. If I don't answer, just leave a message. It's because I'm working with someone else. Or alternatively, I put the phone on silent and I've forgotten.
That's all good.
Because I get so busy doing my thing.
Yeah. Well, you've been great today, Michelle, and it's taken us a while to make this happen, and I'm really thrilled that we were able to have this conversation because I think those are some really, really key points to help people today how to improve what they do in their daily life. So I really want to thank you so much for joining us.
No, really good.
I thought we might catch Sue on at some point, but we'll get Sue on in the next call. And hopefully we'll see you up here again sometime.
Yeah, I think so too. That'd be great. Okay, I'm gonna love you.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.